When you hold a dollar bill in your hand, it feels simple. Just paper, ink, a familiar green design. But what if I told you this small piece of paper carries within it centuries of secrets, battles, betrayals, and revolutions that shaped our world? Here's the truth. Money is not what they taught you in school. They told you it's just a tool of exchange, a way to buy goods and services. But money is power. It's control. It's the silent force behind wars, empires, and revolutions. From ancient coins stamped with emperors' faces to the Federal Reserve's endless printing of dollars, money has always been more than currency. It's the language of history. Every collapse, every empire's rise, every revolution is written in money's hidden script. But here's what they don't tell you. Money was never designed to be fair. It was designed to serve rulers, banks, and those who controlled the system. And every time ordinary people trusted it blindly, they paid the price. So today, we'll uncover the secret history of money they never taught you in school. From the gold coins of Rome to the paper experiments of medieval China, from the Rothschild banking dynasty to the hidden architecture of the Federal Reserve, we'll expose how money was manipulated, how it was weaponized, and how it quietly reshaped the course of history. By the end of this journey, you'll never look at money, or your wallet, the same way again. Money's story begins long before paper and banks. In ancient Mesopotamia, the first currency wasn't coins. It was clay tablets recording debts. Farmers borrowed grain, merchants borrowed silver, and the temple acted as the first bank. Money was born not as freedom, but as control, a way to track who owed what. Then came the Greeks and Romans. They took a step further, stamping coins with rulers' faces. This was no accident. It was propaganda. Every coin carried not just value, but the image of power. Rome's denarius told every citizen, Caesar's face is your guarantee. But over centuries, emperors debased those coins, mixing silver with cheaper metals to fund wars. Sound familiar? Every empire, sooner or later, dilutes its money to pay its bills. China, too, experimented with money in ways the West didn't imagine for centuries. By the Tang Dynasty, paper money appeared, lightweight, easy to carry, revolutionary. But it was also easy to counterfeit, easy to overprint. Dynasties rose and fell with paper promises they couldn't keep. What schools rarely teach is that money's earliest purpose was political. Rulers used it to pay soldiers, fund monuments, and project power. Ordinary people? They were at the mercy of whatever value the ruler declared. The hidden truth. Money has always been a weapon in the hands of the state. Whether clay, silver, or paper, its value came not from fairness, but from the ability to enforce it with armies, taxes, and law. In medieval Europe, money wasn't just metal, it was tied to faith. Kings claimed divine authority, and their coins reflected it. But something new emerged, debt as money. Merchants in Venice and Florence began issuing promissory notes, allowing trade across borders without hauling gold. This was the birth of banking. The church condemned usury, lending with interest, as sinful. But behind the scenes, moneylenders grew powerful. Families like the Medici built empires not through swords but through ledgers. They financed wars, crowned popes, and invented double-entry bookkeeping. What made this dangerous was that money was no longer physical. It was paper promises, IOUs backed by trust, and whenever that trust collapsed, as in medieval banking crashes, entire kingdoms fell into chaos. This was also the age when money became global. Gold and silver from Africa, spices from Asia, wool from England, all flowed into networks fueled by credit. The seeds of capitalism were sown not in factories, but in counting houses. Yet here's the secret teachers skip. This was the first time ordinary people realized rulers weren't the only ones controlling money. Behind the throne, bankers pulled the strings. The discovery of the New World changed money forever. Spanish galleons carried mountains of silver from Potosi, mined by enslaved labor. That silver flooded Europe and Asia, fueling trade and building empires. But too much silver had the same effect as printing too much paper. Prices soared. Inflation spread across Europe. The first global currency crisis was born, not through printing presses, but through ships full of silver. Meanwhile, European empires weaponized money to control colonies. Britain's East India Company didn't just trade. It taxed, governed, and printed its own currency. Money wasn't just an economic tool. It was colonial dominance. The Atlantic slave trade itself was financed by banks and insurers. Ships were insured, slaves mortgaged, profits reinvested. This is the part of money's history rarely told in classrooms. Wealth was built on debt and human lives. By the 18th century, Europe's financial empires rivaled its military ones. And behind both was the quiet but ruthless power of money. By the 18th and 19th centuries, revolutions swept across America, France, and beyond. These weren't only political uprisings. They were financial. Colonists revolted against taxes and currencies controlled by Britain. The French Revolution was fueled by bankruptcy. In this chaos, new powers rose. Private banking dynasties. The Rothschild family became legendary, financing governments, wars, and railways. Their secret wasn't luck. It was control over credit. Nations that once depended on kings now depended on bankers. Schools celebrate revolutions as battles for freedom. What they skip is how money dictated the outcomes. Armies don't march without funding. Revolutions don't survive without loans. And behind the banners of liberty stood ledgers of debt, the hidden truth. By the 19th century, monarchs were no longer the true rulers. The kings of finance were. The 20th century brought a revolution of its own, central banking. In the United States, the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, a private system with enormous public power. Its mission was stability, but in truth, it gave bankers unprecedented control. World wars followed, and money was always at the center. Governments financed war by borrowing, printing, and inflating. After World War II, the US dollar replaced gold as the global anchor, cemented at Bretton Woods. But in 1971, Nixon severed the last link to gold. From then on, money became pure fiat, backed not by metal, but by trust in governments and banks. This shift wasn't taught in schools, yet it changed everything. With fiat money, debt exploded. Inflation became permanent. The silent tax on savers grew heavier every decade. And all the while, the architects of the system, central bankers, IMF officials, finance ministers, remained in the shadows, shaping history without ever facing a ballot box. So what does this secret history reveal? First, money is never neutral. It has always been a weapon, used by rulers, bankers, and empires to control populations. Whether through clay tablets, silver mines, or Federal Reserve policies, money has always flowed upward. Second, money is fragile. From Roman coins to the Weimar mark, every system breaks when rulers abuse it. Collapse isn't an accident, it's a cycle. And every time, it destroys the middle class first. Third, money is hidden power. The textbooks taught you about presidents, generals, and kings. But the real history of the world is the history of money. Who controlled it, who lost it, and who profited when it failed. And finally, money's story isn't finished. Today, we live in an age of fiat currencies, digital payments, and soaring debt. Trust in money is as fragile as ever. The same forces that toppled empires still operate today. Schools never teach this because it's dangerous knowledge. Once you understand that money is designed to control, not liberate, you begin asking dangerous questions. Who really benefits from inflation? Who profits when debt grows? And who writes the rules of the financial system? The secret history of money shows us that the greatest battles in history weren't just fought with swords or guns, but with coins, contracts, and credit. And if history is any guide, the next great upheaval won't just be about politics or war. It will be about money itself. So the next time you look at a dollar bill, remember, it's not just paper. It's the end of a story thousands of years in the making, and the beginning of the next chapter, still unwritten.